those that don't know, we are gonna go through a bunch of questions, but I thought to start with what we'll do is we'll play a quick game of fill in the blanks, just to give us an overview of what ustwo actually is.
God, you forgot to do that.
We're gonna go start with a little backstory first. So Mills, you grew up in?
I like to say Streatham because I like to say London, but it was also Tunbridge Wells. Okay. Royal Tunbridge Wells.
Very nice. Neef, you grew up in?
Warrington.
Okay, great.
Where's that?
It's in the northwest, a lovely town in the northwest of England. Famous for rugby league, if there's any rugby league fans, which there aren't in the south. And having the first IKEA in the UK.
Oh.
Yeah, I always save the best one to later.
There's one here as well, I saw it.
Oh, great.
Mills, your job before you started ustwo?
Challenging question.
Did you have a real job before?
Yeah, well, no, not really.
Okay.
A designer.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, yeah.
No, it's not
Oh. Neef, what was your job before ustwo?
Bioinformatician.
What?
A bioinformatician.
Define?
It's the perfect mix of data science and DNA sequencing together at last.
That's a real thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a booming industry, in fact.
Cool. ustwo started in which year?
2004.
2004.
Who was there at the start?
Me.
And?
Not Neef.
Anyone else?
Six.
You were Six. So Six is your co-founder.
I hired him, yeah.
Who was your first client?
Sony Ericsson.
What did you do for them?
Anything they would ask us to do. No, actually, it was previously the business before when I was a designer. That was all about working with Sony in the sort of Tokyo Design Centre there. And then when mobile started to become a thing, although we certainly didn't think it was a thing, our sort of main client in Tokyo sort of gave us a heads up that Sony Ericsson was going to form. So we thought that was a good time to sort of jump ship from the company we were at.
Nice.
And yeah.
How many employees have you got now across the group?
I don't know.
Roughly.
No, it's not like it's so many. I think it's about 250 or so. It's been a lot more, and we had to get rid of them all.
Okay, cool.
Not Neef though.
You did well.
Not yet. Yeah.
It was that DNA sequence.
You're so cheap. It's alright.
It's awkward.
Yeah.
I feel like it's on a one-to-one or something. Okay, let's start at the beginning. So, how did ustwo start? So you mentioned Sony Ericsson there. What was the catalyst for you and Syncs to start ustwo?
I think it's just we wanted to build. We had been previously at another company called Big Animal, which we loved because actually we came straight out of college in 2001 or something like that, and we landed in a tiny little studio, which is two owners, and Dom and Matt contrasting sort of views but the same values. And I think what we learned there is that you can have a lot of fun. You could have a lot of fun, but actually we had too much fun, and hence it went wrong. But
okay.
I remember the question you asked me now. By the way, I have a thing called ADHD. ADHD crew. I only found that out about a year ago, so it took me a long time. So poor Syncs had to put up with it. But the main reason I'm saying that is it takes me usually about an hour before any sort of tangible stuff comes out of my mouth. So
we got 30
Neef gets
minutes.
particularly annoyed with it. He'll tell me to stop talking.
So Mills, when you started, were you designing?
Yeah, when we first started, I was more of a visual designer, and then Syncs, my best mate actually for 31 years, met him when I was 11. He was more of a developer, but I mean, Flashlight, if you can call that, you can call that a development.
Last month we showed the new video of you guys making a barbecue.
Oh right, that's the one. That's good, isn't it?
It's really fun.
It makes me cry.
Oh, that's nice. It's like a little love story, isn't it? Neef, when did you join? Explain your role.
So I joined So I joined 3 years ago as two. And my role in the beginning actually was, I'd just been teaching myself design on the side after not enjoying particularly the perfect fusion of data science and DNA. And then luckily I happened to get in touch with Mills and ustwo. And that's kind of was after there's a conversation for a few months where there was some tips exchanged, and then I decided to join. But initially, that was when adventure within ustwo was kind of just beginning. So I was doing some like junior design work in the studio, while the adventure floor specifically was like budding and sort of becoming and blossoming like an amazing community. And then just slowly, adventure took up. Then like within a few months, adventure was like purely my role there.
Nice.
Initially, it was kind of everything from like there was just two of us running the adventure floor, so it was everything from like literally managing the floor, doing some like the creative and design and technical work to like build out the first ever website that we had and stuff.
Nice.
And slowly Adventures kind of evolved from a few sporadic investments into creative businesses and like spinning off companies from inside of ustwo into like a floor of like 80 cool creative businesses. And now kind of where we're left is an investment fund that's really focused on sustainable, creative, values-led companies. And a mentorship scheme, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
That's actually not quite true. He hasn't told you the best bit about how it started. Because by this time, because obviously you started 15 years ago, when you start a business, you kind of end up hiring anyone or anyone, and most of the ones I hired aren't there anymore. And then I basically got sort of kicked out of the main client service part by myself, and then kicked out of the games part, and then started Adventure. So I was like, no rules in Adventure. That's the key point of Adventure. That Syncs can't let me stop me from doing anything I want. Anyway, I think I tend to send sort of fairly random replies if anyone ever emails me. You can just send me an email and test me. And when you're allowed to send Michael Jackson pictures, I sent lots of Michael Jackson pictures, like oil paintings specifically. That's my favourite.
Was there more than one?
You just have like a folder of them.
I do have 2 folders of like sort of random pictures that I send to like anyone that dares to email me. But anyway, I had actually said when a great company called Combo had emailed me, I replied just with a picture of Michael Jackson. I tend to do that because I'm trying to gauge whether or not they're serious.
Culture fit.
Yeah, it's a culture fit. Yeah, exactly.
How much do they love Michael Jackson?
Yeah. Well, and actually later on, they obviously liked it enough they made a blog post about welcoming to the family, which we call our company, the family company. And Neef, and when they put the blog post up, my email was still on. They sort of screenshotted it, and my tiny little email's there.
Not important enough to redact.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Well, I don't mind. But then he contacted me because of that, and I loved it so much that he actually bothered to do that. So I said he could come in.
That is my next point. So you.
I'm sorry.
You call yourself. Yeah. So my next point was actually Neef's email. So the family. So
yes,
you've actually changed your business name legally to be.
The group's
It's
called Family. Yeah.
Okay.
Which. I mean, it was not a joke, that's for sure. It's very serious. Everything we do is very serious. But the idea of it was kind of like, when we first started ustwo, we were very much trying to start a place that was as much about the people that are in it as the work we actually put out. And I think Family, although I don't think it was there initially at the beginning, we're just trying to kind of create sort of vernacular that actually, big word I recently, learned that on the way here. That kind of just sort of helped sort of reaffirm what we're trying to be. We sort of grew up wanting to not be like a lot of the other agencies that we'd never actually worked anywhere else properly. We were so desperate not to be like them.
Sure.
I think we're just trying to really push home this idea that we're people and product.
So you're split into three sections: studios, adventure, games.
Yeah.
Studios, was first. I've done my research. Studios was first.
Yeah.
What was next?
I'm going to test him.
Well, I mean, I think commonly known, games came next as like a formal part of the group. But in reality, like the beginning of Adventure was some strange sporadic investments. Like I think the first 2 were in these companies, Tray, which is like similar to Zapier, it's like a no-code integration tool, and Marvel, which many of you might have used actually. It's a prototyping and design tool.
Although judging by their evaluation, not enough of them.
Sorry?
You didn't buy enough of them.
No, right. Not enough people here use it.
Yeah, exactly.
And probably not.
Moratnik.
Should have gone Envision.
Yeah, who knows? But I think those 2 investments happened before Monument Valley, right? So technically, the seed that's then blossomed into Adventure came pre-games. Nice. But even before then, we were making game like Whale Trail came before them.
So
it's complicated.
Played it before.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, was that? Yeah, that doesn't count. So on a sort of really basic level, because that's my level. So we started the client service, 15 years ago, and after 3 or 4 years of that, that's really not my sort of core strength to work for people. So I would use the money that Syncs essentially made for working with the clients to sort of put it into what we then called like our own IP. Sort of, because the App Store eventually came out 11, 12 years ago, I think that we saw that as a route to market for us to be able to put our own products out there. And so that we call that you might have, am I ruining your question?
No, you're back on.
There's we call it successful because successful failure, another one of those classic words that we come up with. Because actually we if you've heard of ustwo, you might have heard of Monument Valley. That's probably the reason you would have heard of ustwo. But that was after 6 years of kind of like spending a lot of time and effort and money on releasing products that they increasingly sort of reached more and more people, but certainly were never commercially successful.
Yeah. So arguably your most famous thing that people probably know you for is Monument Valley. Before that we had Whale Trail. Anything else that came before that? That is.
Rando was a big one actually.
Okay.
So Rando was like an anti-social photo sharing app. Very simple idea actually, but that actually did really well, massive in South Korea for some reason. You basically take a photo, send it, and then all you got back was another photo. You knew where it landed in the world, you could see where it all landed, but you then get another photo as a reward back from somewhere else completely random in the world. I mean, I spent a lot of nights being on, I won't say it to the kids here, like I had to sort of, the days of AI weren't there, so I was the AI then. I spent nights just making sure that wrong stuff wasn't there. Which is actually the reason I lived in it. It was actually good.
Yeah, but I mean, funnily enough, the reason we had to shut down Rando in the end was nothing to do with that. It's because the server costs just blew up.
Yeah, those are more expensive. Yeah. I mean, it was probably only like $1,000 a month or something, but it's still.
Yeah.
I couldn't be bothered. This thing was having a go at me for losing too much money.
So before Monument Valley, you sent out an email to everyone, which made onto Hacker News when I saw it, which was basically this game must succeed. It must win an Apple Design Award. You must sell so many units. It's pretty sporadic. It looked like a late night kind of, not a rant.
It's the standard stuff. You have it in the morning.
Champions call.
Yeah, it was.
And you smashed all those things. So at what point did you look at Monument Valley, you look over the shoulders of the team who are working on it, you go, shit, we might actually do this. This might actually work.
I mean, I think interestingly enough, I had nothing really to do sort of with that game, and that's why Six always thinks it went really, really well. By then I kind of stepped back. I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, by then I wasn't really a designer anyway. Me and Six's job increasingly is really just to guard the values of us two and to allow to sort of weigh up how much money we can afford to spend on something. So, that game cost us nearly £1 million to make.
Yeah.
And there was no guarantee, and certainly based on the history of our sort of own IP, it wasn't necessarily going to do well. But I think that journey of we call Successful, the 16 experiments that we had made, although each one wasn't a massive smash hit, we were learning more and more about what you have to do in order to reach people and to make something that people cared about. And by the time we made Monument Valley, actually Whale Trail, although I actually still love it, was still made by more sort of UI designers than it was game designers. So with Monument Valley, we actually brought a lot of people externally in who had an experience in making games, and then because it wasn't made in a traditional games company, actually, the fact that we did a lot of user tests and the fact that they could pull on the skills of the UI designers, I think it made something that was meant to be more for people that don't like games. So it's a game for people that don't like games. Yeah. And that actually, I think because at the time so many people were making sort of free to play games, we went the opposite. We didn't want to do something like that. Yeah,
so it was one of the first big standout games where it was more than 99p.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was a big jump because to spend £5 on your phone at that point seemed like it was quite a big purchase. I think people are maybe starting to get more used to that, but it was a big jump. So, but that was a decision that was made quite early on that we are doing with premium. We're not doing in-app purchases, any of that kind of jump.
Yeah, because I think we're trying to create experiences that we're not trying to sort of steal people's time. I think we actually made a game that probably lasts an hour if you want to smash through it. The idea of we meant to leave someone with an inspiration. It's the same with any of the work we do, and go and do something a bit more interesting than looking at a phone.
Nice. So you've got things like adventure going on, and you've got the games and whatnot, and they are separate teams and whatnot.
Yep.
How do you stop teams within your teams getting teams within the client service team getting distracted by the shiny new thing that you're working on over here? So do you ever have the issue where you've got client services they're working on some corporate client, and then they walk downstairs and they realise that they're building Monument Valley 3 or something? Is that an issue?
They are actually building that. I'll do a little bit, and then I want Neef to obviously such a legend. I'm not, but if anyone has a client service business, I think that there's definitely a lot of. 8 years ago, whenever we started, actually my daughter's 11, so it's 11 years ago we started doing the own IP. I think initially, we only had maybe the Malmo studio as well. We had London studio, and it was as simple as putting someone, and it was actually a corner, and we were that's what we could afford to do, and create what we could create there. And I think there was definitely a tension whereby you have a client service agency essentially where some people, or most people, are working on for clients, and then some people are working on their own IP. And I think eventually what we realised is that when Monument Valley actually did become a big hit, we eventually realised that had potential to become its own company. And actually, so we've actually moved the own IP out of the studios and down to Oval, South London, because what we realised is if you want to be good at client service, you have to actually want to work for clients.
Sure.
And actually we lost an awful lot of money a few years back when I think we took our eye off the ball of client service. Me and Sink started another business called Dice. We were, I was much more obsessed about the games part of it and what was becoming adventure. And then if you have like 250 other people, and then it was more, we were kind of thinking the founders are not really so interested in the core business anymore, then things start to go really wrong. So I think you've got to be really careful about how you do that. And now what we realise is, games is a business. It's a stand. We have we have the studio group, and there's like 5 studios there around the world, and we have the games studio, and we have Adventure, which is actually in the London studio. They all got their own P&Ls. They are. We ultimately Adventure that Neef works in just eats money, but that's because the client service and games.
Hey, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think that, I wasn't there back in the day when maybe there was some of this tension, but to build on what Mills was saying about like getting people in each part of the group that want to be working in each part of the group is really important. And from my perspective, that's happened, and that is the case now. And now that I feel that is the case, then it's no longer jealousy or tension, it's just inspiration.
Sure.
Like with the London Design Studio recently, we all went to the games team to learn about their creative process. It's very different. Like creating a game, it's more about art direction over design. It's more about like art over like UI. Although all of these disciplines can learn from one another, and I think that's really important. And even from Adventure, a lot of the companies that we invest in, enabling them to sort of receive mentorship and even like enable the learnings from them to be filtered into us too.
Yeah.
From like what's going on in small businesses, which we don't really work with that much in the main studio. I think it's just really insightful for everyone to just get a better idea of what's going on.
And the plan is that you could walk into any of these studios, whether it's in Sydney or wherever, and it should feel instinctively ustwo, whether it's games, studio, whatever they're doing, it should feel that core should be the same? Yeah,
the way I've been to quite a few of the studios now, and I spend a lot of time at games, and the way I see it is there's a baseline ustwo-ness.
Okay.
There's this inherent like baseline that any ustwo studio has that feel, but on top of that, it's actually can be very different. Like you walk around the game studio and there's like drawings and sketches on the wall and bits of art, and like there are different memes, right? But that it can be diversified while all still having that baseline ustwo-ness, I think is really important.
Okay, cool. So, bringing on to the kind of nowadays, you became a B Corp recently.
We did.
Congrats. That's hard work for a company of 5, never mind a company of 200 and something.
Yeah. I didn't do it.
You announced on Instagram and then was like, off you go. And
well, I didn't know it would take so long. Yeah, I announced it in the toilet in Malmo. It's a good toilet. The Malmo toilets are the best toilets. They are actually. I think, so, we're not, I never know where to look when I do these things. I know I'm predominantly looking here, up there, but there's no one actually in the air. But the B Corp for us, so we're an independent. I don't know how many people here are independent, or if they're companies that are sold into other groups. But independence for us has certainly for 15 years been a really core. Well, for me and Sinks especially, it's something that's very important to us. And I think, over the last few years we've seen consolidation crazy. Pretty much every one of our sort of, I don't know, I'm going to say customers, they're not customers. What's the word when they're peers, competitors? I don't really think of them that. They're such jokers. But, they sell into the big management consultancies or the big groups. And I think, it's got harder and harder. And I think we have, what are the things that we can do as a 250, 300 person agency around the world do to try to retain and to bring in talent. And I think B Corp is a really easy. Well, it's not really because I won't be able to explain it now, but it's increasingly something that I think you're going to see a lot more of. And I think what it said, it's very difficult to become a B Corp, and I'm actually not going to be able to tell you what it is because I'm not very good at explaining things. But basically, it's sort of you try to become certified, and what it means is that you change your articles of association, and it basically says the directors of the business you're not just trying to make money for the shareholders of the business. You're actually trying to, you have to take into account the environment, the impact of the environment, the impact of the local community, the impact on the people that work us too. And that's really important for us because that's how we've always been a B Corp. Well, I thought that, and then it was so bloody difficult to become a B Corp, so it was it's a lot harder, but which is a good thing.
And it's not a pay-to-play thing, is it? It's not just throw some money at a thing and they call you a B Corp. It's a proper thing. Is there anyone in the room who works for a B Corp or is in the process of becoming a B Corp? So it's over there.
They can explain it.
So yeah, it took how many people a year to go through the process?
That's probably, well, I mean, you have to sort of pull together a lot of sort of stakeholders across the business, but you know, there's definitely two, you know, working on it continuously. Justin, who runs Adventure, has done it. But I think it's something that it's really, really important for us. And so every 3 years you have to get recertified. So it's not, the idea is that you've got a roadmap. We have a roadmap now of how we can become better. So I think, you know, what always astounds me in many ways looking back now is that any old monkey, I'm a perfect example of that, can start a business, and then you're sort of looking after people and you're making an impact on the world, and or not, or negatively for a lot of people. And I think now we've actually got like a sort of a better sight of how to become a better business, which is really, really important for us because, you know, you're constantly trying to evolve as a business.
That's good. Do you want to add anything on the B Corp thing before we move on to First Mile?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in ustwo's case, the kind of interesting thing is that for a company of our size, we're quite an operationally complex beast. Like 3 companies within a group, each with its own business model. Some of them working with clients, some of them not. Totally different markets. Yeah. It's very different from just like a policy standpoint. Sure. Like, how do you implement policies? Where do they go? Like, do you have parity on benefits and all your employees and stuff between groups? Like, is that easy or hard? Turns out it's very hard. So that kind of is one of the reasons why it took so long. And just as a person like who kind of received the other half of the Adventure team, Justin, ran a lot of the B Corp certification process. So kind of via osmosis of sitting next to him, I kind of got to see all the spreadsheets that he was working on of like calculating all these points. And it's like, it's hard, like it's really hard, but also quite inspiring. Like very few creative agencies are doing it. I think probably more will.
I'm hearing more about it at the moment. It seems to be a thing that people seem to bring up a lot.
I think just like it's becoming like it is a point of competition at the end of the day as well. Like it's how you can attract customers because they also have the shared values, and how you attract talent because you want to have people that share your values and care about the world that they're in. So it's hard but worth it.
I mean, ultimately we are a talent business. That's all we have. So we don't really have sort of proprietary anything. I mean, Monument Valley is very valuable for us, but we have to look after people and inspire them.
Yep.
Which is really easy.
Let's chat First Mile.
Yeah.
You jump on this.
It's all Neef.
Yeah, I'm just gonna walk away.
Yeah. So at Adventure, I mean, for about 5 years now at Adventure, we've been doing all sorts of stuff from like housing creative businesses, mentoring creative businesses, running residency schemes, investing in companies, spinning off businesses and watching them grow sometimes from close, sometimes from afar. And when it comes to the world of investment, there's a pretty like standard way to do things, both as an investor and as a company that's getting investment. You know, have a team, have an idea, get some money, give away some equity in your company. That equity has intrinsic value and speculative value to the investor, and it's in their agenda to make that speculative value increase as fast as possible, ideally, and then you can shift your business and you make some money and they make some money. And this is like the only way that companies really get funding. Like, yeah, you can get grants and stuff, but realistically, like venture capital and the hyper-Americanized sort of Silicon Valley style of venture capital is what's kind of infiltrating the world of business for the last 20 years. And the knock-ons that has to creativity, I think, are massive. Like, you just have to look at companies like Uber, Facebook, and WeWork to see how their like relentless need for speed of growth have had some really negative consequences. Yeah, totally. Like the dark patterns that Facebook use to keep users addicted and hooked to their product is like a minor example, a massive example, but unfortunately one example of like how this lack of patience has knock-on effects. And you know, we're ustwo. It's not like we're like a massive tech company that can like really make a stance on like how these big companies are playing out and how it's working. But there's a trend that we've been seeing, and we're a creative business, and we really care about impact. And you know, we've done things like becoming a B Corp to really sort of solidify and tell the world, like, look, this is something we care about, and hopefully we can become a credible voice, even a small one, in that world of talking about what impact means. And then to have that on one hand, and then also to be sort of playing into the market of like how investments typically work, you can see how there might be some tension there from like an ideological perspective. In the last 2 years, we've been really interested in like alternative models of investing in companies. Revenue shares that are like capped is one example. How can we invest in companies that aren't like big tech platforms? Maybe they're cooperatively owned. Something we're looking at the moment. And I think these are really good ways to build businesses that are sustainable and have values at their core. But a typical investor doesn't really look at them as investable. And that's just really tough. And it also limits support from a massive swathe of companies that aren't building like a scalable tech platform. Like what if I'm just building like a store that I want, and I think that's a really meaningful thing for me to have impact on my local community, but you know, how am I going to get the support and funding to get it off the ground if I don't have like local authorities giving me some funding to do it? So all of this coming into play over the last 2 years, and we're thinking that kind of as a build on from the residency scheme that we ran when we had the adventure floor in our studio, we were like, you know, we want to support a really diverse range of businesses that aren't just the types of business that we would invest in. And what is a good way to do that? Yeah, we can do some mentorship, but you know, we need to be giving money as well. So we've been toying with this idea of giving some sort of like grant or investment-based support. And then the backdrop to a lot of this is, you know, and many of you might be familiar with accelerator programs. It's like how most startups have their first steps. And I really have a problem with that word, accelerator. I actually think it's really silly and speaks to a lot of the sort of negative side of scale and tech that we see today, that I mentioned earlier. And B, I think accelerator programs are frankly total bullshit. Like sorry.
He's paying money to that.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's not even on.
Okay, fair. New designer, yeah. Frankly, I just think accelerator programs, you know, you get 3 months, some company takes like a really heavily inflated percentage of your company, and then you basically have 3 months of learning how to pitch. I just don't really think that's a meaningful way to build a business. So we've kind of put together a program that we think could potentially be an alternative to this, definitely not the alternative, because at the end of the day, different businesses need personalised types of support and not a specific program. So we built this thing called First Mile, and it's 12 months of support, £10,000, £10,000 cash with a pledge to pay it forwards into the next people that join the program. So we're hoping it can be a commercially sustainable program from our end as well.
But not so legally binding, more like if you do well, please pass.
So like there are criteria, like if within 3 years you can afford to pay it, like the pledge says you pay it back.
Okay.
If you sell the business, we're asking you to pay it back or pay it forwards. And there's a couple of the triggers, like if you end up raising like £500,000, which we think are all really reasonable. And it's 12 months in duration, and volume-wise it's really small. So we're probably going to accept maybe up to 4 people at a time, or 4 founders, 4 founding teams at a time onto the program. And because of that, we're trying to make it really personalised. So we've got a bunch of mentors from ustwo's network and ustwo's employees and the network of investments that we've made, as well as just our friends in the creative communities that we've come across. And I think it's hopefully going to be a really meaningful opportunity for a small group of people. And we're making it location agnostic within the UK, so it's going to be totally remote friendly. So we've been going around the UK and talking to people like you and sort of seeing if anyone's interested. So you can learn more if you like, and if you think you're at the first steps of a creative company, you can, if you just Google Us to Adventure First Mile, there's a lovely website with some great illustrations.
I love the handshake of the support from people who have been there, and that actual, we understand this needs cash, because having the support about the cash is used to having the cash about the support is also fundamentally a struggle. So it's looking at both. And I guess within those networks, not just support, but you know people, right? So if you know someone who has tried this idea before or whatnot, it opens up so many doors, as well as the cash to get you going.
Yeah, totally. I think often, you know, with mentorship, the best advice doesn't necessarily come from people that are 10 steps ahead of you. It comes from people that are maybe peers, maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, because it's fresher in their minds. They've done it really just before, which is why our community of investments are all really keen to support. And coming back to like giving money as well, I think that's really important from an accessibility standpoint. What if I really want to start a business, but I'm working full time or still part time, and I just can't really afford to take that step? £10,000 could be like life changing in that context. Or like, what if I can't afford like the travel costs that going to London every now and again for a program for like this much support?
From Southampton to London.
Crazy.
Sorry,
mate.
Off peak. If you want to get up there for an actual meeting,
I never know when off peak is. I just bought anyone.
That's the way to do it. Cool. So sounds great. So if you want to find out more, Us Two Adventures, and it'll be on there. Fab. We're going to take a 5-10 minute.
the end already.
No. We've got more. We're halfway. We're going to take a 5-10 minute break now. Grab another beer, grab some pizza, and we'll be back in a minute with some questions.